My name is Andy. I'm a Rotary Peace Fellow. There were at least 4 of us involved in preparing this event, including Spencer and Dr. Savinci, you can see here today. The speakers tonight, I don't personally know any of them, and that's intentional, among other measures taken to protect the identities of the people who wanted to speak, according to each of their safety concerns. The purpose of the Bearing Witness series is to provide a platform for people who are directly involved in a conflict or a peace-building effort. And typically the purpose is to build relationships. In this case, it is to humanize the people and the situations through their stories and to inspire further curiosity from you and action, either individually or through your own organizations and governments. So please listen carefully and with empathy. The speakers are not leaders or officials. They're relatively ordinary citizens, we are told. We'll start by showing 4 videos, and later in the session, we may get a live audio feed from the street, and we hope to have a live speaker as well, assuming that the internet is working in Myanmar and that the speakers feel it's safe to do so at that time. And we may take some questions in the chat. First, we have some international media clips compiled by Dr. Savinci for some background on the information, on the situation there, and we'll follow that with a series of short interviews recorded and submitted by local people. So first we have some international media clips. The total length of this will be 6.5 minutes.
Myanmar is a country on the brink of collapse. Hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets to protest against a military coup. They have been met with brutal force. Over 3,800 people have been arrested. Many have been tortured, and at least 780 have been killed in street battles. The military seized control on February 1st, after the Election Commission rejected their unfounded claims of voter fraud in the November general election.
And it's been 3 months of chaos. Means that the military seriously miscalculated their own country's response to this naked grab for power.
Since February, over 750 people have been killed in mass protests which rocked the country after the coup. There have been almost 5,000 arrests, with most still detained. But the biggest hurdle for the junta has been the civil disobedience movement. A large number of people are not going to work, be it railway workers, doctors, or teachers. The United Nations Development Programme has said that the Myanmar economy is near collapse.
The junta might like people to think that things are going back to normal because they're not killing as many people as they were before, and there weren't as many people on the streets as before. But definitely the feeling from talking to people on the ground is that the resistance has not yet subsided. It is just no longer as visual as before.
The military says it wants a true and disciplined democracy after claiming widespread fraud in last year's general election. It's promised to hold free and fair elections, but the state of emergencies come at an extreme cost.
ဒီလိုမျိုးဆက်သွားနေမယ်ဆိုတော့ညီမတို့ရဲ့အနာဂတ်ကတော့ညှော်မှန်းလို့လည်းမရတော့ဘူးเนาะမတွေးဝင့်စရာကြီးဖြစ်လာနိုင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒီထက်ပိုပြီးညီမတို့ကပိုပြီးအစိုးရအင်အားဆုံးအကြောက်ဆုံးဖြစ်တာပဲညီမတို့ဆီးရီးယားနိုင်ငံလိုမျိုးလေးပြည်တွင်းစစ်မျိုးကြီးဖြစ်သွားမှာတော့အကြောက်ဆုံးပါပဲဆိုတော့ညီမတို့ရဲ့နောင်မျိုးဆက်တွေအတွက်ကလည်းဒါကြီးကလုံးဝအမှောင်ပိတ်လိုက်တဲ့ပုံစံမျိုးကြီးဖြစ်သွားမယ်လို့ညီမထင်ပါတယ်
Weeks of protests and strikes and a brutal crackdown by the junta have sent the economy into freefall, forcing businesses to shut and foreign investment to dry up.
အခုထပ်ပို့ပြီးတော့ပေါ့နော်စီးပွားရေးတွေကပုံမို့ပြီးတော့ချက်သေးလာနိုင်မယ်ပြီးတော့အဲ့လိုမတို့ဒီနိုင်ငံမှာဆိုရင်အလုံးလက်မဲ့ပုံများလာပြီးအလောက်ကအခွင့်အလမ်းတွေလည်းအရန်ရှာလာနိုင်မယ်နိုင်ငံကရင်းနှီးမြှုပ်နှံမှုတွေက ATM တန်းစီဖို့အတွက်လည်းလူတွေကအများကြီးတန်းစီရတယ်ဘဏ်တိုင်းမှာဆိုလဲကိုပတ်စံကိုထုတ်ဖို့အောင်မှာပေါ့နော်မနက်အစောကြီးထားပြီးတုံငင်းနေသွားယူပြီးတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုး
We followed one protester 2 weeks into the coup. This was his message back then.
အခုကျွန်တော်တို့အာဏာသိမ်းသွားတဲ့စစ်ကောင်စီကပေါ့နော်သူတို့အာဏာသိမ်းတဲ့အချိန်မှာသူတို့ပြောတယ်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံကိုရေးပေါ်အခြေအနေဖြစ်တစ်နှစ်ချိန်ကြတယ်တစ်နှစ်ပြီးသွားရင်ရွေးကောက်ပွဲပြန်ပြီးတော့လုပ်ပေးမယ်ပါတီစုံပါဝင်တဲ့ရွေးကောက်ဒါပေမဲ့ပွင့်လင်းပြောရရင်ကျွန်တော်တို့မယုံဘူးဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ဒီလိုသူတို့အချိန် တစ်နှစ်ယူမယ်ဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်လည်းမယုံဘူးနောက်တစ်နှစ်တကယ်လို့ယူပြီးတော့တစ်နှစ်နဲ့ပြီးသွားတယ်ပဲထားပါတော့နှစ်နဲ့ပြီးသွားပြီမယ်ပါတီစုံရွေးကောက်ပွဲသူတို့လုပ်ဝင်မယ်ဆိုတော့ရွေးကောက်ပွဲလည်းတကူပြီးခဲ့တဲ့2020ရွေးကောက်ပွဲလည်းမျိုးတရားမျှတမှုရှိမယ်လို့ကျွန်တော်တို့တော့မထင်ဘူးဒါကြောင့်ကျွန်တော်တို့လူငယ်တွေအကုန်လုံးက
But the daily protests were soon met with violence. Security forces initially used water cannons, tear gas, and rubber bullets, but this quickly became live ammunition. Martial law was declared in parts of Yangon and Mandalay, but the protesters refused to back down.
When you're on the list, they will track you down, and if they don't find you, they will arrest your parents, your children, your grandparents, whoever they get in hands just to get even. It all started with the coup that took place on the 1st of February. Our business were closed down. Some of the high-profile friends started getting arrested. Slowly, they started raiding the houses. They shut down all the banks.
The Civil Disobedience Movement, or CDM, was launched by pro-democracy activists and civil workers, including medical professionals. It's since attracted all sorts of professions. Refusing to work under military rule, CDM supporters went on strike.
As long as the civil servants, or like government workers, remain at home, it's a form of a protest. Police started arresting the CDM workers as well. Things got really intense when they started shooting. My friends and I started doing food donations, but that got really dangerous as there are informers everywhere in every neighborhood. They started getting arrested. My friends, most of them have fled the country or they are in jail right now. 2 of my friends got shot.
The military has accused the CDM of spreading dissent and instigating violence. In the post-coup turmoil, opponents formed the National Unity Government. The NUG includes ousted parliament members, anti-coup protest leaders, and ethnic groups.
People think that our political situation will lead to civil unrest or a civil war. You have to understand that for the past 60 years, civil war has been going on. And it's only because the Burmese military has been issuing propaganda and then dividing the ethnic minorities. They're torturing the ethnic minorities and displacing their homes and then arresting them. Those have been going on for a long time, but it hasn't been seen on international media or been affected to all 60 million people. But now that it's happening to everyone in Burma, we are experiencing what ethnic minorities has experienced before. What I hope to see is the National Unity Government gets legitimized, the political prisoners get released, and please stop shooting. We are not violent.
I want to thank Savinch for the excellent overview of the situation. The next video is from a more urban and youth perspective. Youth in Southeast Asia context means under about 30 or 35, and the speaker's identity was concealed per her requests for the video. This video is about 5.5 minutes.
For December, in February, as you all know, street protests and people resistance happened in very peaceful and with thousands of people with a big crowd, and every corner of the street on the road. And in March, end of February, we faced the severe oppression. Our protest gathering places, space were cut down, so people could not gather peacefully. So since the end of February, we can see the whole month of March, the anti-coup protesters, they face the severe oppression like gunshots, tear gas bombs, and also being killed. But although they face that kind of severe oppression, they continue, but in a bit more defense way. In April, people they keep doing their protests in a big kind of flash mob and the hit and run way, but they keep their resistance. They show their resistance continuously, and also they also did an online campaign happened a lot in April. But in May, we see like the Yan anti-coup protester, they try to to appear on the street, but that street protests are with large groups of people, like around 100 people. But these protests could not do like for a long time, for a long hours or minutes. So like a kind of hit and run, like around 100 people, they gather secretly at one place, and they protest like around 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then they disappear quickly. People resistant protests continue, but means of the protest, the way they organize the protest, have been changing according to the level of the oppression. But resistance continue, protests continue. People are really serious and passionate and very aware of protests need to be continued to show their resistance against the coup. We are not safe. We are not safe at all. So people with different profile face different kinds of insecurity and oppression. Like for example, the documentary photographer, citizen journalist, and the mainstream journalist, is the oppression and also insecurity, and also likewise other CDM civil servants, school teachers, and government CDM government staff. They also face kinds of the oppression and insecurity, but the environment, the atmosphere or insecurity, oppression is same at every corner, at every time, and every place and any time. So, like for example, even the street vendor, they could be killed or easily. They could be killed or they could be threatened easily. So we are not safe at all. And I feel like throughout this revolution, people from different backgrounds, different identities, and different places, different profile unite now. That unity is very, I feel like that unity is the thing we even didn't achieve in the past. So I feel like resistance bring physical and mental ability more stronger, and that is a big success, I feel like. And now reaching the stage of unity and common understanding and common value. This is very important, and common value, federal democracy, and also all showing sympathy to the minority groups, Rohingya people, and also the people from the conflict area in Kachin, Kayin, Rakhine. So that kinds of the sympathy, that kinds of mental development is very valuable, and also a big success from this revolution that even any government didn't achieve in the past. So I feel like this reset, this success could bring to open a new chapter of Myanmar politics that is totally different from the 2010 political landscape or 2015 political landscape. So current success would bring a new next level of Myanmar politics, or inclusive collective leadership, federal democratic country. So this is a big step, I see.
The next video, the next speaker gives some information specifically about the pandemic, and then transitions into speaking about issues from around the country. It's mostly black screen with subtitles. We've edited for length and added some maps and some photos from publicly available media. It's about 7.5 minutes.
So let me start with the event, the situation before the military coup. Before the coup, we are not very sufficient in terms of healthcare and resources. But the government then led by NLD, the party led by Aung San Suu Kyi, did very well during the pandemic. The government could manage to start the vaccination program in January this year. So although we have suffered almost 1 year of pandemic and the consequences on the healthcare system, economic and social life, we feel like we have hope. So, but in February, all the expectations and all the good feelings of people fall into a nightmare. So the pandemic hit differently in a rural area and urban area. So living in a rural area, they feel like they are more vulnerable. Not only from the perspective of healthcare, but also from the economic consequences. As you might have noticed that since the coup, one of the major professionals to fight against the coup is the medical professional. They started the civil disobedience movement. So the hospitals and the healthcare services are significantly declining because of their participation in the healthcare system, not only in the public sector but also in private sector, has been severely affected. And then the military has oppressed the medical professionals or the civil disobedience movement. They couldn't even let the medical professional treat the patients outside the government hospital. I mean, but they limited the medical professionals to treat the patients, especially who are wounded in the violence and crackdowns during the protest. I also have some video evidence for that, but they are prevented from. More than that, they even torture the medical volunteers who are trying to help the wounded person during the protest. So these are very, very cruel crime against humanity. So since the coup in February, the military actions are on the rise in ethnic areas, especially in Karan, which is border with Thailand, and Kachin, which is border with China, and the next area is now in Chin State, which is border with India. The need of medical aid in these areas are on the rise, not only because of the conflict, but also because of the displacement. Although under normal conditions, there were many humanitarian organizations. Now they are not very active. They don't want to conflict with the military and the people. The IDPs in the border areas are particularly affected by the conflict because the military use air force in that area, both in Karan and Kachin State. That is mainly because of the main EAO in Karan area is the KNU. They are against the military coup, and they demand the military to respect democratically elected government in 2020. I don't think, and I have no knowledge that the offensive attack by the military is related to Syrian movement, but it might be somehow related because some people who take part in the civil disobedience movement are fleeing into that area because they feel they like a safe haven for them. And another correlation is the democratically elected members of parliament have formed national unity government very recently, and supposedly they are in these liberated areas. Just my speculation. I think ASEAN is trying to intervene in this conflict without damaging the standpoint of non-intervention in countries' internal affairs. But I think the problem is in the side of the junta, because they are not currently they are not allowing anyone outside the country who might be opposed to the pop. So it is I think it is a very difficult situation for international community to intervene in that matter, even for the non-political humanitarian aid. But I think from the perspective of international pressure, I do believe that they have a lot of things they can do. Targeted sanctions on the economic groups owned by the military. So two major conglomerates run by the military. It is quite difficult when it comes to China and Russia, but expecting the global embargo on the Myanmar military, especially from China and Russia. The only advantage is the arms. If they don't have arms, they have nothing. Major conglomerate. That's why global arms embargo will play a vital role in solving this conflict.
And the final recorded speaker comments about the perspective of people in one of the ethnic border areas with Thailand, and there are some public media photos and maps added to that. After that, we are going to hopefully have some live audio feed from one of the cities and a live speaker. So if we can queue up the last video. This is 7 minutes.
The military coups, and this changes a lot, like economy and the political situation and the ethnic issues, and also religion issue are a lot of tension in our city. Currently, we are facing firing around the gunshot by the military coups. Today, more than 10,000 people are internally displaced. So in the middle of the city, the people are stay in their houses, but around the city, the villages, they move to their own village, like a high mountain, and some other they went to their periphery, the small house, and they go and stay their periphery. Some other they go to a religion buildings like a church and a monastery. So for development, so most of the NGO and INGO and civil society community development projects are totally stopped, and they change their strategy. Some other they stop their organization elsewhere, and for the local economies, it's terribly go down. Some investment company are going back, and also the good price are increased, and also the banking system is very bad situation. We cannot withdraw the money, and also money value are decreased. I think military coups. So they should not do like this kind of handful violent things to the people. Some of the local people, they cannot hold on their emotion. Then they fighting back with what they have in their hand. Like some are there fighting with like their traditional gang that we can call like Tomi gang, and some are that they using like knife and whatever they have, they against to the military coups. But the military are they shot with like cannon and machine gun to the civilians continuously last 2 years ago. And so there is a very long time history that we have. After the 88, there's more tension with the military and ethnic and folk groups. So actually, the ethnic peoples are asking for like a federal state as a creamy federal state, democracy as a federal state. So as personally, the conflicts will be increased than current situation because like as a country cannot fight military enforce with small amount of people in chaos state. If the whole country fight to the military enforce, that will be easier than individually fight to military coups. So I mean like for chaos state, for current state, the conflicts increase more. People are decided to fight the military coups until the end, which is the freedom of like federal, because they are more than 50 years under the military governments. The people are here, they keeping this kind of emotion for a long time, generation by generation. So they want to remove the military, but they are granted. They are fighting for like a good future. That's what we dream and what we want for our generation and our future for our children. With the freedom of state. Yes, as a international community, they already know about the value of the democracy. So democracy is the power of the people. So most of the people are they against to the military government, military coups. I would like to say follow the democracy value, the people of voice, people of power, and follow the people, the civilian, what they want, and please support what they want. Even if they would like to request to fight back to military government, they have to support to people. We have to face many different impacts like food shortage and economic go down, social system go down, political system go down. So this kind of anger also, I would request them to be a part of their agenda. I would like to, rebuild our education system in Myanmar. This kind of situation is based on faith history and more than 40 years. Education system is go down in our education system. They not add attitude and how to give loving kindness to beings, environments, and people. After finish this kind of situation, first things we have to build again the good education system in our country, which is more diverse and more critical and more analytical and more powerful education for our country. I think in the future also this education will build our country more faster.
apparently in the larger cities every night at 8 p.m. We heard from an earlier speaker that street protests are difficult at this time, and local people will bang on pots and pans and metal roofs and shout and sing for 15 minutes every evening. And I believe we are able to link to that live right now. Is that correct? Okay, so it looks like we do have our speaker here, and I believe our live speaker is prepared to talk about issues in the border areas in some of the ethnic states.
I have a couple of things ready that I would like to put my opinion, and also I have some ideas about the what we have heard from the other speakers and have in common. So I heard about the first 3-4 recordings that we have played now. Basically, most of them talk like the same voice, that humanitarian situations, especially the refugee situation on the border areas, are very, very difficult to guess, because like every day is like fighting. And also like the border securities are not letting them in, and international community do not know how to enter into the such difficult areas. So for me, as I have been working on the mostly in the conflict war zone to rescue people, so it's really difficult for us to also make even though the internal donations, from our, not even from the international community, but just from the local community, trying to send via through church or like through the community leaders, and then that's also like a very difficult for them to generate to go on the process, that kind of things. But the other situation here is like when we are actually talking about the an economic situation in daily life. The city that I'm now, we can call it as a military hub. So I can see the close version of what is actually going on and how they are having the plan. Sometimes I heard from my other fellows speakers as saying that some of the actions and some of the things that they have been, the military and has been doing, are very cruel and they should not be doing it. But like what I want to express is they will be doing it more. They will be doing it more and more into push to the more disaster, because let's think about it. If they are not going to go backward. There is no, it's already humiliated for them, for them. So and also people don't really want to have especially people from the ethnic groups areas, and then the PDFs, the supporter of NUG government will not have empathy to forgive them what they have been doing, but they are not they're not begging for them for forgiveness. They are trying to put more and more pressure and more difficulties on the people. But what we have heard from the closest the results, the closest people from the military is like, if we have 60 million people in the country, they will live with only 10 million people who will support. If the 50 million people do not support, they don't mind killing all of them. So this kind of inside the feeling towards the situation, it's very humiliating. And the other side is like, let's talk about the NCA's nationwide ceasefire agreement that they have done with the ethnic groups and the military and the government in the past. Now all the ethnic armed groups, they have stopped their engagement for the coming next plan, but the government seems to have more engagement via NCA to grab ethnic groups into their agenda. But now it's most likely they are not going to continue for sure. And what I heard from any other fellow speakers, that what they want, the ethnic people and the ethnic armed groups, they want the federal state and the democracy in the state. So that has not changed. That has not changed. So when we're talking about the economic situation in the normal daily life, like we have very difficult problem taking out the money from the actual bank. But what is happening is the money do not go out, the money do not come in, the money don't disappear. The people who have money, they have cash in their hand, and they are started taking as a percentage and as an informal business. So like a black business, like under table black business, that back in Unewin century is coming back. You know, in our parents, our grandparents' time, that we have a problem with carrying the stuff from the Malaysia, carrying the stuff from Thailand, and this is now going backward. That we are coming back to that stage. So like people have money in the country, the money do not go out, the money do not come in, but the money that which is having in the bank are in the hand of people. So the people, the business people, actually have to be very smart and have empathy to play. If someone need cash and the other people have cash and they can provide cash, but they can still do the mobile money and transfer. So they can do the transfer, but what they did is they are charging for like 7% or 10%, sometimes 12% interest to take out, and every 100 lakh. So this kind of like a business, the local business are growing, and also like I see that some of the business like for sure that if we are dealing with the online economy, the local businesses, it's going down. But when we are looking at the inside the commodity, the price, most likely some of the price, yes, are going up, but some of the items are getting very cheaper, because like normally like farmers, the onion farmers, potato farmers, watermelon farmers, they normally trade these items to China with the good price, but now they have nowhere to trade, so they come to the local market and they give it for free, and that they sell it with a very cheap price. So, and they are like but is it really sustainable, or like do we have to be happy about this? Actually, yes, the answer is no. So the conclusion for the situation, that like it's very crucial, and it's very like we are in dilemma, like very difficult time to really see that, even though ourselves, like we don't know, like there are people saying that in July there will be most likely a big civil war going to happen. PDF just train this and train that. So people are living in fear, so much in fears, and do not know where to run and what to do. So if the international community can give some kind of access to those people, like just to calm their fear down, and like manage in like what they can do the best in this kind of like a situation, you know, like the leaders should be talking talking to them about right now what we can access is we cannot access to any international media here. We don't have PSI. We live in a very close with the military hub, and so like we can only watch MWD and MRTV. So we have to take down our PSI and our and whatever we use to access to the international media. But luckily we are able to have the Wi-Fi connections, and the connections are not being good. And in daytime, the electricity, the power is like up and down, up and down. It's like purposely making these people who are functioning with the high technology will be having a difficulty, right? So okay, I think, and the other one thing, my personal experience, very important things that I want to share. This is going to be my last point. When military take over the country, and when they announce the military coups, the reason why they have to do is the voting fraud. But I'm so surprised that no one is talking about this voting fraud, right? So what we do here is like they have no technology to even compare the list to even though they have technology, there is no skilled people who are going to work to really check this voting list and all the system that what the government in the past have done. So they have to ask from us permission with the threat coming, and they give us the software and they want to use this and this. So like it's all going into like a very disaster way. Like they are technically not very strong. They don't have a skill and skilled people. So what we do from the people now, like Generation Z and UG government and the PDF has got a much more stronger foundation for the technique, strategies, and the smartness, intelligence. But we cannot just go weak. We have to stay strong and resilient, like build the resilience. And we don't know how long it's gonna take to end this kind of affair. So, all right, I think this is all the points that I want to mention. And the other thing is armed dealings. That if we stop dealing, if we can urge the international community to be very careful about who they are selling their weapons, because like weapons are not controllable and in the world, and we don't have any we are no one to talk about do not sell arms, but they just should be a little more careful that who they are selling and what they are selling for. That's it. Thank you.
Are you able to stay on the call?
Yes, I'm staying.
Okay. So what I've heard, some of the things that I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, is that ethnic groups are leaving the ceasefire agreement. There's a lot of profiteering going on, which always happens during conflicts and tends to increase the gap between rich and poor. I'm hearing rural farmers losing income, an entrenched and unrepentant military, some concern about international arms sales, and requests that the international community take some steps to support and calm the fears of people who are worrying about the country going further into a civil war type of situation. Are those correct?
Yes, and the humanitarian support should be reaching out from the cross-border aid.
Humanitarian support from cross-border.
Thank you.
Now we have some statements. We have a series of statements that from the international community that were made starting back in February until now from the U.S. and the EU and from other countries. And I'm wondering if we should take a look at those and then come back to our speaker and maybe get some comments from some Rotarians in the group, or maybe from Savinch about some actions that could be taken from the outside. Some thoughts about that. How do we feel about that, Savinch or Spencer?
Sounds good.
You'd like to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
So immediately after the coup, the U.S. government put out a statement. It looks like the same day, but it was a relatively strong condemnation of the action and request for dealing with civilians peacefully. And also it was about, I think at the end of February, the G7 countries made a similar statement, a rather strong statement, about dealing peacefully with protesters. And these statements also made mention of honoring elections and election processes. This is a statement from India that basically says, we believe the rule of law and the democratic process must be upheld, and we are monitoring the situation. Rather mild statement. A headline talking about India being cautious perhaps because of investments. Next slide. Similar reaction from China, which has investments and interest in the Belt and Road Initiative, transport lines from southwestern China through Myanmar to the Indian Ocean. Maybe a factor in their reaction. Go ahead. Next slide. The UN has come out with different parts of the UN have come out with a number of statements, and there is some thoughts that China and Russia are playing a moderating factor in the strength of those statements. Next slide. More recently, China did back a statement condemning violence. Next slide. And the Association of Southeast Asian Nations recently came out with a 5-point plan to move towards some dialogue, including ceasing violence, having constructive dialogue facilitated by an envoy from the association. Humanitarian assistance shall be allowed, and a delegation shall be allowed to enter Myanmar. This was faced with some opposition from some groups inside Myanmar who felt like it was an acknowledgement of the military coup as the government of Myanmar, and was rejected by some factions of the opposition to the coup. Next slide. You can see a number of things in the press about this. Next slide. And the next slide. So there's some hope there and some strong opposition as well. Next slide. And finally, the EU also made a statement calling for acknowledgement of the democratic wishes of the people of Myanmar and a cessation of violence as well. So these are statements from the international community. Some are quite strong and explicit and go beyond just a political statement to talk about rights issues and arms and other topics. So I'm curious if we can hear from our speaker, maybe if they have any thoughts. Is there a majority opinion inside Myanmar? Do you have a sense of the role of the international community any more than what you said? Or Savinch, do you have thoughts on this? Action steps for the international community?
Actually, I think we shared, because I was not on the internet now, but I think we shared already the Amnesty International's action point, especially.
Could you talk about that? We didn't see that one. We saw statements from some government statements, but not that one.
Yeah, Amnesty International has the like a campaign. And the campaign was the protection human rights, mainly the journalists. They were being jailed, so they want like a freedom of speech. So the campaign was related with the protection human rights, and also the there are some journalists also from the Thailand they deported. So it was about the freedom of speech, and then release some journalists. It was that campaign, as far as I remember.
Okay, Spencer, do you have thoughts? Can we call on some Rotarians maybe to give their thoughts about the role of perhaps Rotary, the Rotary Peace Fellowship Alumni Association, in taking some action on this issue potentially in the future?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have some good friends over here. We all got Rotarians community groups here. Mark, you want to say a few words about from your perspective, since you've been very involved with all the association work as well all along?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how Rotary can engage except possibly through global grants for humanitarian purposes. I mean, so far, most of the action I'm aware of is directed at Cox's Bazar, and and even that, is a pinprick. There are so many NGOs active in Cox's Bazar that it's almost hard to, sort out who is there and who isn't there. Almost everybody is there in some way, but are they? Is it accomplishing anything? Because the conditions are so stringent, and what the Bangladesh government will allow is so limited that it's hard to pin down what's actually being accomplished. And as far as Myanmar itself, I mean, all we can do is, possibly pressure our own governments to take a more active role.
I'm kind of curious, Mark, do we have any Rotary clubs, Rotarians in the Myanmar?
Yes, there's one in, I think there are two now. The question is, I'm not sure how much they can whether they're even functioning and having meetings.
But would it be interesting to hear from them, and from their point of view, being in Myanmar as a Rotarians, is there any plans or what their thoughts are and how the international communities of the Rotarians are able to support them as a Rotarian community to do that, what they think is most appropriate for the country?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that the club in Yangon, they used to post like every day on Facebook, at least once, and they haven't been there. I think, there's a limit on what they can do in terms of saying anything publicly. And of course, the military is monitoring social media all the time.
Yes, but I think there's some responsibility on the international community to do what we can each in our own context. And what I've seen in the statements, if we read through those statements that we showed in the PowerPoint more closely, we can see even the U.S. government and other countries making relatively strong requests for humanitarian aid, for opening the media, for freeing prisoners and journalists according to the rule of law, through some kind of formal process. And Rotary clubs do have some influence inside their own countries. So addressing our own governments, I think, is an option for a lot of people in some countries.
Can
Go ahead, Susan.
Can I have a moment?
Yes, please.
The leadership from the Rotary clubs, they have a very small interest in get involved in the political manners, and also there are some pressures from press release and announcement and warnings from the departments to their companies, their organizations, and especially I'm sure that the Rotary club members, Rotarians, are also having some kind of difficulty even to speak out. They have to care for. Most of the Rotarians they have a very high profile. So even though the celebrity and high profile in the business area, or even though in social media and blog, and these are the people that military are targeting to shut their mouth, and they are hands to give to the area where it's needed. So So I think that we should be at least putting like a less pressure on the Rotary Club inside, because they are also inside the country, so they are in a position that, so most of the things that they do is like a Rotary, like the cliff lips and water projects, and there are some humanitarian projects that they do specialize in what is needed. So mostly they will go for the poverty reduction, not for getting involved into the when they are some poor, they see some poor and some kind of like a disease, they will be and happy to help, and also some individual people who are suffering from some different types of disease. That will be more on their focus for now. And yeah, they have not been active, but they cannot be inactive. So I was thinking like it would be a little bit difficult and a little bit of the like a more pressure that they will create the guilt that they can't do, even though the international Rotary Club is saying that Myanmar Rotary do something. So that would be my point. Thank you.
Yes. Obviously, this is quite sensitive. So we're just about to the end of our time here. I want to remind everyone that we do have ways to. Oh, we have a raised hand.
Is it okay if I? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Great. Quick. Yeah, my name is Jasper. I'm a Rotary Peace Fellow from Uppsala from a few years back. But it's just really thanks a lot for the speakers and for this presentation. And but it's just interesting to hear about the global grants as a mechanism, and there's a lot of discussion now about supporting in Myanmar and how it really requires a lot more flexibility in terms of accountability frameworks. And I'm just curious, from traditional donors, just curious kind of what the scope for maybe these global grants can offer to supporting initiatives more related to CDM, et cetera, that maybe they could kind of have a bit more scope than maybe funding from kind of more traditional donors. So I was just curious if anyone had any reflections on that. Thanks.
I think as we're winding up to the end of our official time here, what I'd like to do is offer some opportunities to continue to engage on this issue. And again, it's incredibly sensitive inside, and it's easy to do more harm than good in many cases. There are some ways that we can stay involved. And we have our Global Peace Conference, Rotary Peace Fellowship Alumni Association Global Peace Conference, coming up on June 19th. And there is a session on Myanmar there as well. Could we show the poster for the Global Peace Conference? Okay, so there's a session in the Global Peace Conference coming up on June 19th, if you'd like to continue to engage on this issue. I'm interested to continue this discussion. I do think that I think it's important for each person to look at their own context and to focus on the things that were mentioned. We noticed in the ASEAN statement, the focus was on de-escalating the violence and creating a dialogue inside Myanmar, and obviously that's necessary. And then there were statements from various governments and organizations focusing on a variety of other issues. Those may be things that a person personally or their local organization, if it's Rotary or some other organization you're a member of, that might be able to take some action on some of those things. Suggestion from Savinch. Do you want to comment on do you want to make your comment?
Yeah, actually, I just shared these global civil societies that they are focusing mainly for global arms embargo to stop, the violence against the women's rights and against any protesters. It was the biggest like a civil society campaign. So I think around 220 organizations, they signed this petition, and including some humanitarian also actors like ACF and so on, and also all the local NGOs from Myanmar and also outsider. And also there is one global movement for Myanmar democracy. They have started to write write the statement and send it to all the foreign affairs. The same things, they were suggesting 3 things. Again, human rights, protection of human rights, and also discrimination of people in Myanmar, and also embargo. So they were suggesting please stop their embargo, and then they do not want any military of government in Myanmar. It was their statement.
So there are a range of statements out there. We invite you to do your own research and stay engaged on this. Join the Global Peace Conference. I just want to refer it back to each of you to take whatever action in your own context, in the context of the ability of your own organization and your own space. What we're concerned about here is the violence that's currently happening and the potential escalation of that was noted by all the speakers, and doing what we can to avoid that. That's our job as Rotary Peace Fellows and as Rotarians as well. Thank you everyone for joining, and please join the Global Peace Conference.
Thank you so much. It was really an interesting and eye-opening session. Thank you, Andy. And Spencer.
And Savinch.
And Slavich. Oh, Savinch. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah,
I look forward to the next session. I think